Hello.
Hot day, perfect weather for Deershed Festival this weekend, Graham. Couldn't have been happier, I
I've
imagine.
I've done two festivals this weekend. I've done the Deershed Festival, music and spoken word mainly, very family orientated in
Hmm.
North Yorkshire near Thirsk, and I've also done Saltburn Food Festival. Although that was by accident when I went to the seaside down from Middlesbrough and near Whitby, and it turned out the town was having a food festival today, which I didn't know about till I arrived and
Did you buy
decided
anything
to.
exotic in Saltburn?
No, it took ages to walk along because the whole for about a mile of the main street all the bars, cafes, and restaurants had pop-ups, and then all the regional producers had their own stalls for food and drink. So it was just
Hmm.
chock a block. It was a massive success and way better than anything that happens in Harrogate or Nesborough. It was really good.
But what made it stand out as being better than that, Graham? I mean, most towns
All
now do food fairs. We know
mm,
Malton has made its name as the food capital of Yorkshire with its monthly food markets. What made something like this event so good?
First of all, you could eat and drink anywhere in the street in that closed off area.
Hmm.
There was no rules, which Harrogate would find very hard to handle.
Yeah.
Secondly, the huge number of food and drink stalls were all regional based. There was
Yeah.
nothing from Manchester or Berwick or Birmingham or Liverpool. It was all Yorkshire in Teesside. It was just, and it was all high quality. It wasn't. You didn't look at the stall and think, "Oh, I'm not having anything there." It was all good stuff. It was fantastic, and I only went there for the sunshine, the beach, and the paddling. I didn't really go for the food festival, so that was a happy bonus.
Did you buy any kippers? You didn't buy kippers?
No, there were seafood stalls, but I didn't see any kippers
Mm,
anyway. And I'm
mm.
not a huge fan of kippers. I know that kippers, smoked kippers from Arbroath in Scotland are famous, but I've never been a huge kipper fan. And also anybody with sensitive smell is not a huge kipper fan either because kippers are phenomenally
They're one of
smelly.
those things that you have at if you're going to have them at all,
So that's
don't have them at your own house. Have them at a hotel or indeed in a restaurant.
no, no, no. If you're invited round to a friend's house for a meal or a party, never bring kippers.
Do not bring. Can't go wrong with that. Now, Graham, we'll come to if we may. We've touched upon just very briefly Deershed. I think we might as well open with Deershed. And unexpected hits from the current Deershed Festival. I think you went on the Friday. Just to remind
Yeah.
our listeners, where exactly is Deershed Festival and who now is directing it? Because that's one of the changes from the past. So just remind our listeners of that background.
Well, it's held in the gorgeous countryside in what at one point was a deer park. I'm not sure if it still is, and it's in the
Mm,
grounds of a stately private, I think it's a girls' school. So
correct.
it's gorgeous scenery, and it's held every year, has been for the last 14 years. And it started off very small and low key
Mm,
indie music festival, and over the years it's become the Latitude of the North. Not quite as many people go to it. It's retained its like sense of not being too big, and as well as being phenomenally high quality and very civilized and very family oriented. It's also very good at picking which acts to have on. So it always chooses a range of up and coming indie guitar bands,
yeah.
folk related singer songwriter, but also sort of like this sort of sophisticated, slightly edgy end of pop and a bit of soul and a bit of dance. So it's got exceedingly good taste. And every year I go, I always see bands or acts that I didn't expect to like, mainly because I
Mm,
hadn't heard of them.
yeah.
And when I see them, I think, ooh, that's good. That's really good. So as usual, dear shit always surprises you. You go to see certain names that you recognize. There's always a lot of names you recognize. So this year I had CMAT, Bombay Bicycle Club, and King
Yeah.
Creosote, and BC Camplight. They even had and the horn section because do a bit of comedy. So the horn section turned up
Oh,
live, and
right.
that's
Yeah, yeah.
horn with an E, not horn
With,
without
yeah.
an E. And then
Alex
today,
Horn. Yeah.
today
Mm,
Andy, exactly, yeah. Today Andy Burnham, the mayor of Manchester, was there talking about his book Head North. It's that sort of event where anything can happen. In So I went on the Friday thinking, well, this will just be a low key day. And lo and behold, it was just packed full of goodies once again.
Now, the prize act of all, I think, for you to see was the choral, but we can come to them. Perhaps who caught your eye, that caught your ear, more to the point, that was unexpected, if you like? I mean, that's one of the joys of festival going, is the surprise element of discovering, as you say, a musician that you didn't know before, or maybe even if it were a Sunday, actually popping in and seeing Andy Burnham talking about a book, which is, I mean, books have actually been, literature's played quite a strong part in this festival, along with science over the
Mm,
years.
that's true.
But what caught your ear then?
Yeah. Well, that's why Dave Simpson, who writes for The Guardian about music,
Mm,
was floating around because he was doing a couple of talks as well. But yeah, what caught my eye, I didn't expect was I enjoyed Pillow Queens, a four-piece female indie guitar band from Dublin. Although they eventually ran out of great material, but they were a great guitar band, live Pillow Queens. But
mm,
also, I loved Jalen Nagonda. And Jalen Nagonda, it turns out, wasn't American, even though he's a cool black dude with a
mm,
red shirt, cool black shades, plays
mm,
excellent guitar, and
mm.
specializes in the currently trendy genre of retro soul. So he sounds very early 1970s, a bit
Yeah,
Marvin Gaye, what's going on. And
yeah,
I hadn't heard of him really. And I like Curtis Harding, who's in the same sort of field, but
yes.
not in that. He wasn't there this weekend because he's American. But I didn't know who he was, but I could
No.
tell he was going well because as the set progressed on the main stage, the crowd kept on getting bigger round the main stage. And when he went off, you'd have thought he was headlining. So he was so good at what he did in an understated fashion. I mean, none of the songs lasted more than about 2 minutes to quarters.
Yeah.
They're all to the point. It was just glorious retro soul stuff. So I
Mm.
went straight to Crash Records because the Leeds record shop had their own tent
Yes.
at the
Yeah.
beer shed. I went straight in there and bought his debut album, which came out last year on this
Mm.
cool New York label, Daptone Records, which
Oh yeah,
specializes
yes,
in
yes, yeah.
retro soul and funk.
Mm.
And I talked to the Crash Records guy when I was buying the album,
Mm.
which I
Mm.
think is called "Come Around and Love Me." That's not an invitation, by the way. That's the name of the
All
album.
right, Graham. Yeah.
And I said, like, who's this Jalen Nagonda? He says, well, I went to college with him. I said, oh, that's
Mm.
interesting. And it turns out Jalen is American, but moved to England to go to college in Liverpool, and now
Ah,
lives in London. Now lives
yeah,
in London, but
yeah.
he's sort of getting successful by stealth. He's getting a bit bigger at a time, and a
Mm.
little bit at a time. It was fantastic. And also, I went to see the former poet. Is he still poet laureate?
He
Simon
is still
Armitage.
poet laureate. Yes,
Oh yeah.
he is very much still poet laureate. Mm.
So he's got a band called LYR, sort of
Yes.
liar, I suppose. And he played in the Lodge tent, which is a sort of like open marquee of desert sand colour
Yeah.
with no sides. And it always an interesting act. So last year I had Steve Davis's Krautrock band.
Oh
This year
yes,
you've got
yes, yeah.
Simon Armitage's Simon Armitage's ambient band. And the first two tracks were so low key
Mm.
with him with a sort of like ambient wash of keyboards, tiny bit of guitar, and his lovely poetry and his laconic Yorkshire accent on top. It was
Yeah.
really low key, and I thought, this makes public service broadcasting look like Led Zeppelin. But then
Former
he paused.
headliners, of course, at the festival.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin's never played the Shed, but obviously
Yeah.
not. But after the first two songs, he's actually very funny on stage. Simon
Mm.
Armitage said to the crowd, "I thought I'd start with my two biggest disco bangers," which is which is quite a good line.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he did a song called Enlightenment, which again was the same sort of style,
Mm.
ambient wash, bit keyboards, bit guitar, his lovely Yorkshire
Mm.
poetry. But it was about libraries and why libraries are great. And he'd written it for a special event to support libraries, which of course had been threatened
Yes.
by the previous government. And I was nearly crying. It was
Mm.
such a beautifully rendered defense of libraries and what they mean to people and
Mm.
what they mean to him. It
Mm.
was just absolutely gorgeous. And I was I was nearly in tears. It was exceptional.
When
So I didn't expect that. I'll
no,
tell you.
when City of Culture, not City of Culture, I'm going to correct myself, but when the Leeds variation, I think, on that was launched, and Simon did a poem about Leeds with LYR, and I think
Mm,
it's because his book that he wrote about wanting to be in a rock band, but he's actually ended up going down the line that worked so well for John Cooper Clarke, worked really well for Linton Kwesi Johnson, Benjamin Zephaniah, which is to use the natural rhythmic poetry presentation within a music setting. And I think that's where he's found the best place for it to be, rather than having aspirations to still I don't know, be the new House Martins or whatever. So interestingly, he's coming up next year, early next year, 24th of January, an evening with Simon Armitage and LYR. And it's going to be a combination of poetry and music again with Simon there. So that's to look forward to in York at York Theatre Royal.
I think the good
But of
thing
course,
about Simon Armitage when he does this musical poetic combination is that the poetry is a very high standard. It's still poetry.
Yeah,
it's fully poetry. It's not like him doing a pop guitar band version of poetry. This is proper poetry. It's like Ted Hughes had joined Mogwai. Obviously not, that's a bit over the top, but it's a little bit.
Oh, I like that prospect, Graham. That was one that would have been fantastic. Yeah. No, I mean,
Hughes, fantastic.
I think it neither diminishes the music nor the poetry. And that's the key. It actually it enhances both. It enhances both, as did Martin Hannett's arrangements for John Cooper Clarke's poetry with the music behind. It doesn't want to be a distraction; it wants to be a complement, and that's exactly what is the case with Simon's work as well. So, Graham, then the headline act for you on Friday night was the Choral, who have been on a run of really, really strong. If you like, I don't want to say second half of career, but I think we can really say that with the Choral. But they've been on a really hot streak of albums in recent times. So how did the set list work out this time?
Well, they're a Liverpool band, so Liverpool bands don't do as they're told and don't give you exactly what you want. That is a Liverpool thing, really. And so the last two albums, Coral Island and Sea of Mirrors, have been absolutely superb, and considering they've been going for nearly 25 years, that's quite a feat. But this is a gig that shouldn't have worked. They were headlining the main stage on the Friday night. It shouldn't have worked. They walked on stage almost dressed as cowboys, and apart from 3 hit singles, they played "Pass It On," "In the Morning," and "Dreaming of You," obviously big hits. Apart from that, they played almost no other classic album tracks they've done over many albums. They played tracks which I mainly didn't recognize. And at first I thought, oh dear, this might not work, because the bizarre thing about Dear Shed is that the audiences at the tents are always fantastic. But the main stage, because it's so family oriented, the crowd often doesn't go to see the headliner. It's one of the rare festivals where the headliners don't really dictate the mood of the event. It can go wrong in terms of the audience fully participating or turning up in force. But with the Choral, again, like Gel and Nagonda, the crowd kept building as they were playing, because they were absolutely brilliant. So even they were playing tracks that weren't always their best tracks, the band, I hadn't seen them live for literally 21 years, 22 years. They are much better live as a band than they were when they were younger, when they were first really successful. They're a superb live band, and they had a sort of like circus psychedelia feel to them. And the kids loved it, so you had lots of families watching, the crowd getting bigger. The kids were getting into it, perhaps because that slight circus psychedelia feel. And because the kids were into it, the parents were getting into it. Before you knew it, the whole crowd was getting into it, even though they didn't recognize all the tunes. And it was just absolutely brilliant. At one point, they did this massive, long psychedelic freak out because the show became a bit more rocky as it went along, which went on for about 8 minutes, and ended up with them turning it into an interpretation of Pink Floyd's Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun. And it was just absolutely glorious. And I thought, God almighty, watching the Choral is like watching a great British band in 1967. That's how good it is.
What about the Liverpool factor? I mean, you mentioned, they don't do the obvious. Liverpool's swagger in performance, I mean, sometimes it can go a bit awry in the performances of Echo and the Bunnymen, depending on how Ian McCulloch is feeling on any one night. But actually, that unpredictability is what's often interesting there as well. What is he going to do? How is he going to be? How is he going to interact? What mood's he going to be in? In terms of how the Choral integrate with an audience, how they relate to an audience. And a festival is a slightly different thing from playing completely to a home crowd. You're not doing that. You're playing to a festival. Excuse me, playing to a festival crowd. So how do they interact with the crowd?
Well, at first I worried. I thought, early on, they made a remark about, and this is a track from Coral Island, if anybody bought it, which even if it's true that
Ah,
despite
yes, yeah.
even if it's true, despite the great reviews, it didn't sell shed
No,
loads, to use a
no.
poor pun on a Deer Shed
Yeah.
festival. You don't
Mhm.
want to say that to the crowd. It doesn't make the
No.
crowd feel good. And I can't imagine it makes the band feel good that you're bringing up yourselves. So at first I thought, oh, this definitely could go wrong. But then as the audience got into the gig, the band then got into the gig and
Mm.
loosened up as a performance
So
and
it's a
became more
mutual
outgoing.
loosening up. Mm.
Yeah, exactly. And by the time they got towards the end of the show, when they were getting rockier and even more psychedelic, they were starting to move like a proper rock band,
Mm.
which obviously, when they're playing a bit of a freak out song,
Yeah.
works a treat because,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
when a band moves to expressive music, it makes the whole performance come alive. It makes the audience come alive. So by the end, they were a great live band and they established a great rapport with the audience. It was a triumph.
Yeah. So I wasn't too far from Deershed yesterday. And indeed I was in Thirsk, and very quiet was Thirsk because everyone had gone to Deershed, and I went to Thirsk Hall for many years, the home of the Bell family, and now being run by the artist Willoughby Garish and his wife, and his wife is a member of the Bell family. And the sculpture garden there is 20 acres of garden, some of it wilding, some of it lovely classical English gardens. And this is the second weekend in a row that I've been to a sculpture park in a garden. The previous weekend was the Himalayan garden at Grulthorpe, which is near Ripon. And I just want to sort of sing the praises of these
Oh, yeah.
places, really, because
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah.
I think the joy of, we know often people go inside to see their art, but there's something I think about placing sculptures in the countryside. And we've talked about the Yorkshire Sculpture Park many a time on this podcast. So I'm focusing on two other ones here that are definitely worth discovering. There's the Himalayan Garden Sculpture Park season's running till November the 3rd. And I think there's a long running likewise with the Thirsk Hall Sculpture Garden. And so I like the fact that you just go around quietly at your own pace, surrounded by nature, and you see how sculptures integrate with nature and the placing of them and the contrasting artists. There's so much pleasure in this. And I think when you're looking for just quiet pleasures in life amid all the noise of going around a sculpture park in beautiful countryside at peace is a lovely thing to be able to do. And it's interesting that here in Yorkshire, I've mentioned obviously Yorkshire Sculpture Park as well. And Newby Hall, of course, traditionally has had sculptures as well in the summertime. And this is something I think that we should celebrate, really. We are blessed with beautiful countryside anyway, but it's interesting then to see how sculpture then plays its part. And in the case, first of all, of the Himalayan Gardens, there's a regular collection there that grows every year, as many as I think 90 now. But on top of that, this year,
You mean
they've highlighted.
grows as in like as in being planted then grows naturally?
No, we're just again just
Natural
really well,
sculpture. Yeah, I like that.
really well chosen the sites for those anyway. But and they're
Mm.
very varied, and they're very varied. But what they've done on top of that this year, and they're going to do the same next year as well, is they have an additional garden map and sculpture trail to highlight the work of more sculptors. And maybe in the case of I think pretty well all of them, maybe they've not exhibited there before. So and it's an opportunity as well to buy the works. And yes, some of them are. Not exactly the cost of buying a Mars bar, shall we say? But it's interesting opportunity to show off the wares of other sculptors. So it's as much as anything, you know, it serves to highlight the range of talent, but also to appreciate as well where sculpture sits within the outdoor context. Now, a lot of sculptures, of course, end up indoors, but actually, I think one of the things that's attractive about these is that they so suit the outdoors. So that sculpture park, I mean, it's, Himalayan Gardens is one of, I don't want to call it a hidden joy of Yorkshire, because that's unfair, because actually it's been around for quite some time now. But if people have not ever been there, if you go early in the year, the Himalayan garden element of it is in the rhododendrons. But in the later part of the year, actually, in many ways, you see the sculptures to better effect because there's less of the foliage around. Now, in the case, excuse me, I'm carrying a slight cold this week. In the case of the Thirsk Hall Sculpture Garden, there are fewer sculptures on show, but again, you have a lovely walk around the gardens, and they have the wilding areas. It's sort of delineated with just mown sections to walk through. And amongst the artists there, Michael Lyons, who had a wonderful exhibition, as it turned out, a posthumous exhibition, one that was arranged before he died, but was held afterwards, which is in the York Art Gallery Gardens. And so a really, really esteemed sculptor at work there. There was a young talent called Rory Menage who had a piece there. There was work by Tim Pomeroy, works by Rob Ward, William Tucker, Jeff Lowe, and they all have just little boards and explanations, and you can be guided around. But it was just such a lovely atmosphere. And then there was the joy of discovering off to the side was the former stables there, and there were these gorgeous little piglets there. So that was an unexpected pleasure. Apparently the piglets were the villagers bought this pigs.
What real piglets?
Real piglets.
Not sculpture piglets.
So the
I would rather see a real piglet than a sculpture any of the way.
Oh, Graham, how can you say that? That's fair enough.
Well, you know what I'm like.
I know, and it was a joy to see these little piglets. What had happened is that they'd bought a pig and they didn't know it was pregnant, and suddenly there out popped these 7 little piglets, mighty gorgeous creatures. So there's also 2 gallery spaces to complement the sculpture garden as well. One of which is going to be done up at the end of the year, and kind of given a refurb for going ahead. But again, has excellent work in there as well. So Thirsk Hall open. Not sure how many days a week it's open, but if you just look under 2 things to look under, at Thirsk-Hall and at Willoughby Gerrish, Gerrish. He calls himself Bill, even though he's got this wonderful exotic name Willoughby, but he's known as Bill. And you could also look at info@thirskhall.com. There is a charge at both places to visit, but I think it was well worth it. There's also, there's a cafe at the Himalayan Garden, and tea and is available, tea and coffee and other drinks, etc. And are available at Thirsk Hall.
Charles,
So
no more details. Don't give me the menu for goodness sake.
I'm giving those details just for the pleasure of the experience.
Well, yeah,
so
I agree. It sounds like a great day out for sure. But you know what I'm like when it comes to opera, reggae, and sculpture, I'm fussy as hell. So
you are, Graham, but that's fine. Go there and speak to the sculptures. Tell them if you either you like them or you dislike them.
Yeah,
but I don't think.
Well, that's what I do. You're just sculpture part.
I don't think you should.
Sculpture part. I've been around there many times, and half the time.
I mean, you've enjoyed the Yorkshire sculpture part.
I just apply a very sort of stiff yardstick to
okay, what's the stiff yardstick then?
It has to do something for me straight away. I have to walk past it in the open air and go, "Ooh, that's good," or "Ooh, that's intriguing." If none of those 2 things happen, it's not that I'm against having a sculpture there in the open air at Yorkshire Sculpture Park or Thirsk or Growthorpe. It's more that it's like, okay, it's fine, but it doesn't really do much for me. So art to me always has to do something to me quite quickly. Otherwise, I just start to think, well, what's the point? So I get a little fussy-wussy when it comes to sculpture. I can't really help it. But I did enjoy. I went to see the Rodins in Paris a couple of years ago, and they're outdoors in a garden, and there's a lot of them. It's like, massive greatest hits of Rodin, and that was amazing. Outdoors and lovely gardens in Paris. So it's not I'm against it on principle. It's just I'm a bit touchy.
You're fussy, and I understand that. But one of the things I like about this opportunity to see so many different sculptures is exactly that you're not all of them you're going to like. I accept that, Graham, absolutely. But introducing, in the case of the sculptures at the Himalayan Garden, new pieces and maybe new names to sculpture that people don't know, lots to be said for that. And I like the fact there's the sheer variety of them. So yes, you're not going to enjoy them all, but hopefully you'll appreciate some of them. And so I understand, if you're a bit sniffy about it. But I think there's enough at both of these places actually that you would enjoy. Plus, Graham, it's good for exercise. It's good to be walking around outdoors,
connecting with art. it sounds like a great experience, but although I don't usually like the word experience. I mean,
No, I don't like the
the
word experience, Graham. No.
yeah. Oh,
How
unless
was
it's a
your
Jimi
experience, Dave?
if it's a Jimi Hendrix experience, fantastic.
Fair enough,
But
but
for
any other
example, like
experience?
the waterside in Nesborough, just down the road from
Oh yeah,
Harrogate,
yeah.
which is
Mm,
absolutely gorgeous. It's like you're in Mediterranean, and people come there to go to the World's End pub, which is
yeah.
very popular. But they mainly come there to get a boat and go along the river
Mm,
at Nesborough, the waterside. Well, it's all being expanded and made even nicer along the waterside. And it's now called Enjoy the Knaresborough Riverboat Experience. And I thought, well, you're not enjoy. Well, obviously it's an experience. Everything's an experience. Why is the boat particularly an experience? You're just actually hiring a boat. It's not like it's, why tack the word experience on it? I thought it's just
it's
another
one of
bit of
those vibe words, Graham. It's one of those
yeah,
vibe words.
exactly, yeah,
Now we're into the last 8.5 minutes, so we've got one more, I guess, heavyweight subject. We've rather avoided interruptions this week, for which hopefully forgive. But if we just do our one, well, really rather a subject matter for that you will lead on. The great essay writers, how recent collections by Joan Didion and Christopher Hitchins, the great late Christopher Hitchins, compare to late Gonzo journalism writer Hunter S Thompson.
it's
Now,
a bit of a big subject to cover in 7 minutes.
I was going to say,
I'll give
Graham,
it a go. But
right, I'm barely going to interrupt with this. I'm going to see
really,
what you say and then chip in.
all right. Well, all three are part of new journalism, whether they wanted to
Yeah.
be or not. Hunter S. Thompson helped invent it, as did Joan Didion,
Mm,
and Christopher Hitchens grew up in the shadow of new journalism, which
yeah.
affected British journalism and British art criticism and British political commentary, although not as much as it affected American.
No.
And when I was first writing a lot in the early 90s, I was heavily influenced by new journalism, which, people like Tom Wolfe and Joan Didion, Hunter S.
Yeah.
Thompson in the
Mm,
60s. And I once interviewed Pure Essence, a Manchester band who were nearly big, upstairs at the Long Gone the Duchess, where
mm.
Nirvana played. And they were winding me up with something rotten. They were saying, we're friends with Sean Ryder. Have you on these? Do you know what Sean Ryder gets up to? Sean does this and Sean does that. And you could see, because at that point I looked a lot younger. It was quite a long time ago. I think
Mm.
it's about 1996. And they said, do you know what Sean Ryder does? And they were clearly just trying to like shock me. And I wasn't that bothered anyway, because wasn't quite as young as I looked. And then they said, like, who's your favorite music writers? And I said, Norman Mailer, Tom Wolfe, Joan Didion, Hunter S. Thompson. And the lead singer said, they're not music writers. And I said, I don't like music writers.
Mm.
Now, nowadays, I would have said, I do like music writers. I like Lester Bangs. I like Grail
Yeah.
Marcus. I like John
Yeah.
Savage. I like David
Yeah.
Stubbs. I like Rob Young. But then, no, I didn't say that. I said I don't like music writers, probably because I was trying to wind them up. So
Yeah.
it was a battle of winding up, and they thought they were on top, but being me, I was like coming back up from the ropes.
Yeah.
And I was heavily influenced by all those writers in terms of how I write. And
Mm.
I thought I recently got Joan Didion's 2021 collection. Let me tell you what I mean. And Joan died in 2021, that year it came out,
Mm. Mm.
the year she died. And I also recently got Christopher Hitchens' And Yet collection of essays, which is published 2015. And having read all of Hunter S. Thompson's work many times,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought, let's see how this compares to him, because he's very different in a lot of ways to both those writers, even though they have links and commonalities. And yeah, I think that the Hitchens thing that is different from both Didion and Hutchin and Thompson is
Mm.
he's British. So even though he's got that sort of, he's got the acerbic me focus of Hunter S. Thompson, who wasn't afraid to put his opinion across without any varnish. I'll just tell you what I think. Uh, he's got that, but he's so grounded in the very British idea of having to please everybody and having to prove your case by dealing with all the potential negatives to
Mm.
your case.
Mm.
Now, Hunter S. Thompson never bothered with that. And Joan Didion doesn't do so either. And Jones was a very cool, precise, almost distant writer, fiercely intelligent, but fiercely idiosyncratic. But what she brought to it was a detachment and a bemusement, and much less emotional than Hitchens. Hitchens very polemic. He's
Yes.
more influenced by George Orwell. Being
Yes.
British,
Mm.
Hitchens was more influenced by George Orwell. He tries to convince you of something, whereas Hunter S. Thompson isn't trying to convince you. and he's not trying to be above it all and cool and detached. He's in it. He takes every issue, every subject as a personal issue that he's personally involved with, and he tries to reveal the truth of what's below it all, rather than like exploring all the surface ideas and surface signs of debate and disagreement and cultural phenomena. He tries to get the heart of what's actually going on. And so when you read Hunter S. Thompson, especially his good books like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail, when you read those books, you get a revelation. Something is revealed that you weren't expecting. It's like almost biblical in its impact when he was at his peak of his powers. Whereas you don't get that with Joan Didion. With Joan Didion, there's a mystery. What does she actually mean? She's almost too complicated. With Hitchins, it's all very sensible, despite his own strong personality and his own strong convictions. So even though they're all linked and influence each other, they're all substantially different.
Was Didion elusive then? Is that what you're saying? I mean, is she difficult to work out her meaning by comparison?
She wasn't a personality. She didn't attempt to be a personality. Like Hitchens would appear on talk shows the whole time.
Yeah,
especially
exactly.
America. He moved to America, and after 9/11, he became an American citizen. He loved America that much. He loved being in talk shows, and Hunter S. Thompson was a huge personality, which is
Yeah.
why people like Johnny Depp still revere him to this day. But no, Didion liked to be above it all and away from it. She wasn't there to make herself a star. She was a
No.
serious writer, but almost too distant. And that's why when she brought out that amazing book called The Year of Magical Thinking, which came out in 2005, it was about the year after her husband, the writer John Gregory Dunn, died. And it was about how she handled the aftermath of his death, how it made her feel. And it's her most emotional book. And it's a stunning work because when someone close to you dies, she's completely described exactly what you feel and think for the months afterwards in great detail from every angle possible. It's just a stunning piece of work, and it's probably her single best piece of work, even though I love all her books like Selection Towards Bethlehem and The White Album. It's just absolutely brilliant. And I prefer both Didion and Thompson to Hitchens, even though Hitchens is a brilliant writer, because eventually you get more emotional depth. Hitchens is an intellectual analyst. He analyzes things and then comes up with a pithy summation and his definition of what's happened. But it doesn't really grab you in the gut. And both Didion and Thompson grab you in the gut eventually. It's like being sucker punched.
And that's your preference, the sucker punch.
Well, yeah, I always think that intellect without emotion is I'm going to sound like Woody Allen now, is an empty experience. It's like when Woody Allen once said, "Sex without love is an empty experience," but as empty experiences go, it's one of the best.
Yeah.
It's like that.
That's an interesting distinction, isn't it? Because I like to think that the best writing has both intelligence and heart to it. And I'm not blowing my own trumpet or whatever the expression is as to how I write, but I think that if I find that and I'm certainly not comparing myself to these great writers that you mentioned, but I think that it's very important to have heart in there as well, to be guided by both your emotional response to something and your intellectual response to something. And in the critiquing work that both of us do, I think that's absolutely essential. I think to just distill it intellectually, particularly if you're going to a concert, for example, you can't just intellectually distill it. You've got to get the heart and passion that actually was in the performance across. That's essential. It has more impact because because again, if the actual reading experience that you're giving is lacking some form of heart, it's much more difficult to connect. It just is. Heart is what we first connect with, it seems to me.
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic Sub production.